Hi, Keith Livingston here again with Healthy Intelligent Training. Today I'm talking with Colin Lancaster. Now, Colin is an independent coach in the Lydiard tradition, and he operates out of Shrewsbury and the county around Shrewsbury in Shropshire.
Are you going to mention your twin brother who I work with?
Oh, Colin and Colin. Yeah, my brother Colin is Colin's co-coach.
We call ourselves Colin NZ and Colin UK, so there's no confusion.
Yeah. Now, you'll see from the background behind, Colin is in charge of the Lydiard Foundation UK and doing a great job there, and they're running seminars and certifications, etc. Now, what I'm interested in talking with you about, Colin, is your views on training youngsters. I know you've had quite a bit of success with the youngsters you coach in your group. Can you run me through what a typical training week would look like, say, when they're putting an aerobic base together?
My wife works with us, and Colin will turn up. I do most of the coaching, and Colin sort of observes and observes and observes. And if we want a particular point put across to one of the runners, Colin will do it for me. So, we have two groups. So we have little uns and big uns, as I call them. So little uns are basically prepubescent people that turn up, and they go with my wife, and they just they learn how to run chatty. Perhaps we'll talk about that later. But they learn how to run chatty, which is really gentle aerobic running. And then they do their sparkly bits, and they do their sprinting, and they love doing that. We don't do any anaerobic stuff at all because they have a very limited anaerobic system. And we just play fun, and they do hopping and skipping and a bit of, hate to say it, but physical literacy type things. And they do very well in races, and they gradually improve and they get better. But once they get to 14 or 15, they come across to me, and then they're probably, well, there are two distinct types. There's the type who's just there because they enjoy running, and I have a lot of sympathy for people like that, and they just ruck up and they won't do a lot of training in the week, and they just have fun. And then I have others, it's about 50-50, and the other half I'll write a schedule for because they want to train properly. And if I write a schedule for them, chances are they get into the top 15 in the country, I would think. And so of those people, last year we had two in the top 10 at 800. Liam is a 17-year-old lad, and he's 17 now. I think he's ranked 9th in the UK, and then we've got others running on Tuesday. So they're all, they do very well. And Shropshire is a tiny little county, so the training that you asked me what they do in their aerobic base, they would learn to run gently, and I think I have to teach them to learn to run gently, to learn to run chatty, and then they gradually build up. I'm not frightened of getting them to run distances. We run for time, not for distance, and we just build up the amount of running they do. Pre-Christmas session would be warm up would be what we like to say a cruise mile, Keith. So we were talking about our terms. What does cruise mean? Well, it's a Lydiard half pace, or your brother would call it sub-maximal pace, but you can't relate to marathon running because children don't run marathons. They haven't got a clue what you're talking about. So we came up with this term cruise. So it's just a little bit more than chatty, and they cruise round, and I just time a mile as they warm up. And then if they're getting fitter, that mile will get quicker. And Liam, the top guy now, the fastest lad, he'll cruise a mile in the middle of race season now. He'll cruise a mile, not get out of breath in about 5:05. And then the little and the 15-year-old distance runner, she'll run it in quite close to 6 minutes, and they're chatting at the end of it. And so we do that, then we do our strides. We were talking earlier, weren't we, before you press record, about drills and things. I don't do hardly any drills, but all I do is those lactic sprints. So every single session we will do 10-second sprints, and I'll do them in pairs. So they do their stride, fast, relaxed, and then they walk slowly back. Then they do another one, and then they jog a lap to make sure that they got that lactic energy back in their bodies. And then they do another 2, and we might do 8 of those. And then we might do a little. The other thing I like to do is I've got this thing about eighths. If you run an eighth of your distance, you're not going to tire yourself out. So it came when we did the Lydiard coaches had a fartlek discussion on Zoom last week, and I brought it up then about, because I was an 800, 1500 meter runner, and an eighth of the distance, you felt absolutely fantastic. So when you're running 1500, the first 30 seconds of your race, you felt fantastic. So, and you're not anaerobic. So I will give them 35-second efforts, and I will put a mark out on the track for where I think their pace is. And what they have to do is they have to get to the finish in the 35 seconds. So they learn pace judgment before Christmas, and that's all they do. So they hardly get anaerobic at all, and gently build their miles up.
You stress very easy, very low intensity recoveries as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I have to teach that, Keith. They all want to go too fast. One or two of them are sort of driven, and they won't go slow enough. And you were saying I don't know, you might like to describe it to us about that person that is talented but won't run slowly, so they never train their slow twitch muscles, and that they keep up for so long and then they just burn out. So
yeah, that's the there one moment, gone the next athlete or runner. It can be on a long run. This otherwise very talented athlete is right with you on a longer run and gone, and you think, oh, that athlete's a little bit weak mentally, but maybe not. Maybe they just haven't trained their slow twitch fibers by running slow enough to access their slow twitch fibers, which are the ones that can use fat or fatty acid substrates as an energy source, rather than the faster twitch fibers, which aren't really suited to use fats, but more glucose and glycogen. They're not even training the slow twitch fibers. If they're really talented, they can run aerobically just using their fast twitch fibers, because those fast twitch fibers, if someone's got a good spread of them, which is inherited from mum and dad, they're the type of athletes who can rock up and run, fast right off the bat, and run for maybe up to an hour and a half or 2 hours quite well.
And they enjoy running at that speed, though, Keith, don't they? And they don't necessarily enjoy running at a slower speed.
No, they some of them have great difficulty running slower, and a typical example of that was, and Arthur Lydiard used to describe it, was with Peter Snell. He said he never really looked comfortable until he was well under 60 seconds pace for 400. He rocked all over the place. And then when he got up to his most comfortable speeds, which were, faster than most people can run, he started to look really good.
Sometimes I get them to do a mum run. So I get them to run with their parents, and that normally does the trick, especially if it's a recovery. But what I've noticed, Keith, is over the years is that youngsters are no different to adults. You will get these youngsters that are really quite driven, and you have to knock it into them that running fast all the time is not the way to improve. That one of my mantras is it's not how fast you run that makes you a faster runner, it's the volume that you do. So you've got to gradually build up their volume, and in order to do that you have to take their foot off the gas. But so the bottom line is I have to teach them what their paces are, and hence the chatty and the cruise pace. And we limit it that most of their running is chatty, talking comfortably in full sentences. I have to make them aware of their paces. Yeah, if an athlete isn't aware of what they're doing, they don't know what pace they're running at. They don't know, and they don't know why they're doing that. I always say they're on a rocky road to nowhere because they don't know what they're doing. So you've got to know what pace you are, and you've got to know why you're running that pace in the week. And once you've done that, then you can start to put a plan together.
Tell me about these two youngsters you're training now who did really well last week over 1,500. What was the approach there? I think I read somewhere in communication with you that they did a 1,200 metres time trial. Is that correct?
They both did it. So I think we were saying earlier, Keith, weren't we? And your brother was the classic overtrainer as a youngster. I could imagine he was a bit of a monster. So he is even more careful than I am. But
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's unbelievable.
He still is a bit of a monster now. But the thing is, with the Lydiard training, what you have to realise is you have the pyramid, and so you have the pyramid. You got your base phase. This is all with the children. We do the base phase. We get them doing the hills. Then we do a tiny little bit of anaerobic, although that's adapted. And then, but once you've got all those energy systems and everything in place, then you have to be a confident coach and know what to do. And you need to take your foot off the gas. And as Lorraine Moller would say, who works with me in the Lydiard Foundation, so you've got to keep all the plates spinning. And all you do is you keep the plate spinning, you work on their pace judgment and making sure that they know what pace to run at for their fitness. And Colin is fantastic. He can work out what their times are going to be and what their paces are by looking at their training and looking at the previous races. And so in that integration phase, we give them time trials, and we haven't had any races. Then all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 races they can do in a week. And they'd done a 3K, and I thought the meeting was going to be cancelled because there was gale force winds and trees blowing over and things, but they carried the meeting on. And Liam ran 8:41 in a 60 mile an hour winds. And and little Beth did 10:30, and she's only 15 in a gale. So that they were a little bit disappointed in their times. And I don't know why I thought, like, Colin was going, "Oh, what are you talking about? Like, you've run brilliantly." So in order to make them confident, and because they've done a 3K, I would put a faster one in. We did a 12K time trial.
1,200?
So 1,200, yeah. And it was a lovely day, and this time it wasn't windy. And Liam, this other lad he's gone through his first pyramid, and his PB for 1,500, I think, was 4:25 before last year. So they did the time trial, and Liam ran 3:04, and Sam, who was running with him, ran 3:09. And so we knew they were ready. So then we took our foot off the gas. We didn't do any more training. We haven't done a hard session. We haven't done a long anaerobic session at all. And they did a slow, they were both in the same race. They did a slow first lap. Liam did 3:56 for a PB, and Sam did 4:03 for a PB. So, and they're off to do, on Tuesday, they're going to do a 3K up in Manchester again. And fingers crossed, it's not going to be windy. And I just know, Colin knows they're capable of a very fast time, and they're confident because they've done a fast time trial. They've got this lovely positive feedback loop going on. They know they've run a good 3K. They haven't done any hard training in between. And we were saying, Colin and I always have a discussion what we're going to do. So the session, so they ran on Wednesday, they're running again on Tuesday. So yesterday, all we did was 400 meters at their 3K pace, bit of a jog, 300 metres at their 1500 metre pace, some strides before it, as Colin says, stride outs before, and a few strides afterwards, and that's
Is
them
that
done.
an attempt at a Kiwi accent?
Yeah, sorry about that. So then, that's them. They don't need to do any more. So there was a coach training at the track before us, and his athlete had done 3 times 300 metres with a 45-second recovery. And then I thought, whoa, that's quite a tough session. But then chatting to him afterwards, he did it twice. So that's him gone, isn't it? He's done this really hard anaerobic. He's really maxed out his anaerobic system. He's probably damaged his aerobic system by doing it.
Well, as Arthur used to say, he's just hammered 6-inch nails into his coffin.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like I say, it takes a confident coach to know when you've done enough. And we had that. You were there because we did the Art of Peaking with Rod Dixon and Lydiard conference, and there was a lot of people turned up, and it was 2 hours long. But I clipped, and it's on the Lydiard Coaching UK Facebook page, a little clip of 4 minutes of Rod in 1983, and it's just a lovely little section where Rod was coached by his brother, his older brother John, and 2 weeks before, he says, he just describes it beautifully. He says, training had gone beautifully. I was in the best shape I've ever been in, and I was due to do a two-mile time trial, and I just rang my brother up and I said, can I do a 1 mile time trial? And he said yes, and he describes the time trial, and the bottom line is he did it in 3:58, and he said, I just knew I was ready. And then he said, all I did was some barefoot running on the grass and a bit of jiggle joggling for 2 weeks. But basically that's him. He's confident, and his brother's confident. He's got him prepared as much as he can, and he's ready to go. They're confident. They don't need that extra hard session or whatever. So it's a time when a coach has to be patient. It's quite an exciting time, because when they've reached their peak, you don't know what on earth they're going to do. They could really, once you reach a peak, you can really exponentially improve your performance. And that's where we are at the moment.
Barry McGee used to say, I do not know what I cannot do.
Yeah. I don't know what it's like over there in Australia, but in the UK, there is this people giving anaerobic training to youths and children, even children well below puberty. And I just got this theory, it's coaches being lazy and that they don't have to move because they can stand at the 400 metre mark and give them 400 metre reps, and they all come round, funnily enough. They come round, they come back to you, so you can stop the watch. Coach doesn't have to move. But actually, if they do 400 metre reps or even 300 metre reps, they're never going to get fitted, because they haven't got that energy system developed, because they haven't gone through puberty. So I find that really sad. Whereas, if you train them aerobically, especially children are built for aerobic running, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. They're just brilliant. And even if they just enjoy running, they'll be so much fitter than their peers. And they'll have more energy for life, won't they?
You've only got to live near a primary school and listen to what's going on at lunchtime.
Yeah.
And you just hear all the chirpy little voices, and it's all energy. And if you walk past the playground, you'll just see activity everywhere. They're running from one game to another. Everything's running and high energy and aerobic. It's a whole lot of, it's like a fartlek session, and you'll just see it. It's brilliant to see. And that's the natural state of children, totally suited to spontaneous aerobic running with little sparkles.
The other thing about what training do you do? So you do an aerobic base. I do a hill training phase where they do steep hill, Lydiard steep hill running. I wouldn't do the bounding bit with youngsters, because their bones are growing and their tendons are. But we do steep hill running, and it's slow movement up the hill, and they love doing that. And then we might come off that, and in the winter I have a circuit, so they would do 3-minute efforts. But the 800-meter runner, we do those 50-50s, the Lydiard 50-50 wind sprints. But what they do is they do 50 meters on, 50 meters. You can do it on a track. So you can do 50 meters on, then you gradually slow down for 50 meters, and you speed up for 50 meters. So if I got my maths right, you do 4 lots of 50 meters on the track. But you can do it in a linear way. So you can go 50 meters, slow down 25, turn round a comb, jog back, then sprint across the middle. And the 800, the people that like running fast, they don't do any long reps really, but we have a lot of success with people running, doing those. They might start out, they might only do 8 or 9 of them, lengths that is, but they will progress and they will get up to 20. And it's a little anaerobic session, and it works really well, and that's plenty for them to do. So that's got 3 of them into the top 10 in the country. So you don't have to do masses of anaerobic training with these youngsters. And one of them's only 50, she's 15. So yeah, we don't do flat out 300s or anything too intense with them. They don't need it.
Leave that for races, eh?
Yeah, once you're in a race, yeah. Why not? Can I show you my sweatshirt, Keith?
Yes, tell us all about it.
So this is the other end of our running spectrum. I'll come a bit closer, there you go.
Yeah.
This is a Colin Livingston design, Chatty Sparkly Runners, and it's our adults group. And basically it's Lydiard for recreational runners. So we describe, I tutor the England Athletics and Welsh Athletics leading in running fitness courses, which is the first level. And I will say to them, if you've got beginners, make sure that they can talk comfortably in full sentences. Make sure you do the alactic. So they do the aerobic training, they do the alactic training. For goodness sake, keep them out the middle ground where their legs are heavy and they're getting out of breath, and it's a horrible place to be. So keep them either end. And I'd spent a fair few years telling people this, and I thought I need to describe it better. So the chatty running came in, that was the aerobic, talking in full sentences running. And the sparkly bit is the 10-second alactic strides where I promise you won't get out of breath if you just do 1 or 2 of them and have a rest. And so that's really caught on. And so Chatty Sparkly Running is a Facebook group, and Anne and I, that's my wife, go out and we do a video every week. And that's catching on really quite nicely. So if people want to find us, but we were doing a filming yesterday how chatty running is as relevant for a performance athlete as it is for a recreational runner, because as we said right at the beginning of this interview, even the fast runners have to learn to run chatty. They have to get that base aerobic fitness in there. And the Lydiard we're beginning to have an impact really, because I don't know what it's like over in Australia and down under, but I'm seeing more and more articles about base training. They don't necessarily know it's a Lydiard principle, but more and more blogs and things are going on about building my base and maffetone training and running aerobically.
Yeah.
When we did that 2-hour myth busting with Rod and Greg McMillan, it was interesting that people think it's Lydiard base training is slow running, but it isn't. It's a real mixture of fartlek and alactic strides and running at different aerobic paces, as you put in your book. Oh, and one other thing just caught my mind when we did that art of peaking. Well, I asked a question. I said, well, it's a brave coach that takes their foot off the gas and stops training hard. So I thought, well, what about this? So I asked Greg McMillan, who's one of the US's most well-known and respected coaches, and Rod Dixon, how do they know when they're reaching their peak? How do they know when their athletes are reaching their peak? And Greg was very astute. He said, I just know because all of a sudden they're doing the times, but with much less effort, and everything becomes easier. And then once you know that, once everything becomes easier, and so when they're training anaerobically, 66 seconds, feels quite hard if you're doing it at your 3K pace. All of a sudden, 66 seconds is just so easy. And what you have to worry about, you have to teach them pace judgment, because it becomes so easy, Keith, that if they're not careful, they go out too quick. Yeah. So hence, that's why I did the 400 meters at their 3K pace, because Liam did 66 seconds. He was jogging on the spot, but he's got to know, because if he goes off, Colin will have a go at him if he goes off too quick, because, 4 laps into the race or 5 laps into the 3K, he's gonna know that he's gone off too fast. So it is when you're reaching your peak, it's very easy to go off too fast because you feel so ready to go. Not so bad in an 800 because you got to go off fast anyway. But in a 3K or a 5K, you've got to really temper. You've got to know that you're reaching your peak, and you've got to know that the effort is going to feel so easy. As different from those that don't take the foot off the gas, who just have to slug it out all the time. And it never gets easier for them. So then they're not going to beat you because their training's pulled them down.
I know when the original Lydiard crew went on their first European tour, really, and as a group, it might have been 1961. Barry McGee did a personal best over 5,000 metres, which was about well over 20 seconds or maybe 30 seconds drop in performance from his previous personal best. And he went from, say, top ranked in New Zealand or number 2 behind Murray Halberg to number 3 in the world all time in one fell swoop. And I asked him about what he did in his training, what they were doing over there. And he said, well, basically, he thought his day job he was doing in New Zealand all day, he was a greengrocer or a grocer, and on his feet all day on concrete and lino. Going to Europe was like a holiday, and all he had to do was just jog around a little bit each day, and they just had that's all they did between races, was just jog easily, and it accompanied a huge drop in his times on the track. And so he finished that year, 1961, as the World Cup 10,000 metre champion, out kicking a couple of Olympic medalists in the World Cup final, close to 2 minutes flat for the last 800, and that was about what Barry could do for an 800 flat out. It was maybe a little bit under 2 minutes for an 800, but he managed to do that at the end of a 10,000. But he said that they did very little training compared to what they were used to, but that was the time to not do any training. So that was what they did in Europe, and that's how they had this huge.
You can carry that on for quite a length of time, and the discussion that we had is the longer your base, the longer you can maintain your peak for.
Yep.
So yeah, so it just that's how. And the other good thing about doing the Lydiard training pyramid is that you know when your peak's going to be. So we had this coronavirus lockdown here, and a lot of people contacted me saying, I suppose you're just doing your base training, are you, Colin? Are you just going to do a protracted period of base training? I said, no, I'm not. I'm going to go straight through the pyramid and hoping that there's races in late August. So because you want to stimulate each part of the pyramid, the adaptations to each part of the pyramid, you don't want to miss it out. So we've gone through the whole part of the pyramid, and I've had to delay the peak a couple of weeks, but now they're all running PBs, and they're running next week, you know, and it's just exciting times, and they get carried away with it. But we predicted when that peak's going to be, because we've gone through the pyramid and we know when it's going to happen. I know they're fresh as a daisy. Colin's told them roughly what times they're going to do, and it's hardly worth doing the race because Colin predicts them so accurately. So, so you know, they're going out there full of confidence, ready to rock and roll. So it's great, and we really enjoy it. So, and it's great fun working with the other Livingston as well.
Yeah. Oh, good luck with that. All right. Well, thanks, Col.
Thanks, Keith.